So I'll talk a little bit around who I am in a moment, but this is all about exploring what it means to balance people and performance. And it's quite a big topic. We'll want to, I suppose, the underpinning part here is well-being, and that well-being is not a nice to have, but a core driver of organisational success. I chose this topic because it's an area that we definitely get the most questions about in the work that I do with clients and with organisations. And people have very different approaches to managing performance. And if the balance isn't there, problems arise, and then we are definitely seeing an increase in grievances, stressful and lengthy capability processes, and people absent from work long term. And this is, as you know, costly for everybody involved. So a little bit about me. I'm Lisa. I have a background in business psychology and I run Illuminate. So we're a workplace wellbeing consultancy. And we create cultures that are open and supportive of well-being. So we're all about trying to be proactive around this topic rather than simply reactive. My background is in vocational rehabilitation, and that's given me a lot of experience supporting individuals with a range of health conditions to kind of get back on track and to thrive at work. And that's, I suppose, performance is always a feature in there. That, whether it's someone feeling they're not performing, someone not meeting expectations, often does come into that conversation. So we deliver a range of sort of strategy and culture development work, and we run wellbeing surveys. We develop leaders and also run the mental health first aid training, run wellbeing events and workshops, and we also have absence management and vocational rehab services, so the more reactive side of things. So today, this is about kind of understanding the current wellbeing, performance and absence trends, but I'm not going to delve too deep into that. I will provide the slides, or you'll get a copy of the slides afterwards, and I have added a couple more in with some references and further information, further reading. Recognising that performance dips are often wellbeing signals. Understanding the role of managers in balancing people and performance. We're going to talk through a simple conversation framework that you can apply at work, and also just knowing where to go for specialist support. So over to you while I go through some of these stats. If you're happy to just post in the chat anything that you're seeing, any trends around performance, around absence at the moment. But wellbeing and performance are very tightly linked. Poor mental health is a major performance drain. We know it, but I'm definitely seeing this more and more. Presenteeism, so when we're in work but we're unwell, so we're not performing at our best, that's estimated to cost organisations around 24 billion a year, so it's huge, and it's often hidden. And there's been a sharp rise in sickness absence. So pre-pandemic, it was around 5.8 days per employee per year, and now it's risen to 9.4 days per employee per year. And yes, it's just great, a great or significant rise, and it's something to really be mindful of. I think when we went through the pandemic, a lot of people weren't well, but they were kind of working from home, so weren't letting people know about that. Whereas someone's put in their empathy, burnout, higher stress and strain is leading people to need that time off now. I think we're just go a lot of the time, aren't we? And that just shows the absence figures there, just how much it's risen really since 2015 to now. So what impacts our performance at work? There's the QR code, that's probably better. What impacts our performance at work? This is anonymous, and I think you can put in a couple of responses each. We can see a couple are going to be coming in now. Overwhelm, definitely. Clarity, or perhaps lack of, yeah. The amount of support we get, our well-being, hugely. Stress, yes. Tiredness. The bigger the word, the more people have said it, so well-being's coming out big there. Workload, yeah, the demands of our role. And that might not necessarily be just the demands themselves, it could be our perceptions of the demands and how we're managing those. No performance management, yeah, we'll come on to that shortly. Yes, stress from management, noise, life. I mean, there's a lot of things. External distractions. Life is complicated for many of us at the moment. We're trying to fit a lot in. So any others I haven't mentioned there? Poor communication, toxic cultures, So I think it's just good to get in that mindset. You know, there's a lot of things that do impact our performance at work, which does, I suppose, make it sound like quite complicated. But a lot of this is about that communication and really understanding what is going on for somebody and not making assumptions. It's not always just workload, is it? It's not always somebody's external, life stressors. It's usually a combination of things. Caring responsibilities, yes. A lot of us do have more responsibilities now, and we're trying to fit all that in. And actually, flexible working is brilliant because it allows us to do that. But I think sometimes it can come a bit of a cost of us all trying to do too much. And sometimes it means no rest. So it's trying to get that balance right. So we've got a couple more questions later on. So what we're going to cover here is just 4 key or main factors that impact performance at work and which all interlink, and they kind of cover off probably most of what you've just put in that word cloud. We could spend a whole session on each one, so this is very much top level information due to time. But if anyone does want to know more afterwards, you can get in touch. So overall well-being is the top one I've put here. CIPD's wellbeing research does show that when people experience good wellbeing at work, they are more motivated, they're more productive, they're more likely to stay. So poor wellbeing, on the other hand, is definitely linked to stress, absence, and reduced performance. So wellbeing isn't separate from performance, it's very much a prerequisite for it. So we'll delve into that a little bit more in a moment. Manager behaviour. So this is the single strongest predictor of performance. We know there's a lot of research around, the reason people leave jobs is usually the manager. And so the quality of people management understandably influences well-being as well. A lot of the research by Gallup has been into this. It showed that 70% of the variance in team engagement and performance is explained by the manager. Third one is around job design and workload. So research consistently shows that performance improves when people have manageable demands, autonomy or control over how they do things, the right supportive relationships, clarity on their role, and fair change processes. So many of you might recognise those of the health and safety executive management standards, and they do map directly onto performance outcomes. So if any of those factors deteriorate, performance drops, and that's even in very highly skilled teams. And the fourth one, psychological safety. So Amy Edmondson has done a lot of work in this area and identified that teams with high psychological safety learn faster, make fewer errors, they innovate more, they perform better under pressure. And the flip side of that, if there isn't that psychological safety where people feel they can show vulnerability, speak up, ask questions, people are more likely to make mistakes and hide them, avoid asking for help, and take fewer healthy risks. So all of those things impact performance within a team. Again, managers kind of influence that psychological safety through building a culture of trust and actually modelling those positive behaviours. So being honest when they've made a mistake, showing that they're fallible, showing that they are vulnerable. I found that period of work really difficult, actually. You probably noticed I've been a bit distant, and just being quite human definitely is powerful. So the first factor we mentioned there was well-being. I think someone said something around balance in that word cloud, but it can feel tricky achieving a balance between managing performance and well-being. And as a manager, you must think about the business and team goals. So performance is obviously a key priority, but well-being underpins performance. So we want to meet somewhere in the middle of this scale. We've got a performance focus on the left, so sort of pressuring people. If we ignore well-being, then someone's health may well worsen, and at that point, confidence is impacted, the trust is kind of lost, and recovery is likely to take even longer. And then on the far right, we've got a purely well-being focus, so maybe known as coddling, where performance concerns are just ignored, and actually it then becomes very difficult to raise them. You might be sitting here thinking, yep, I've seen this, or you may have come in maybe into a team as a new manager and things haven't been handled well before, and it's really tricky then. And over time, again, impacts people's confidence and obviously impacts the overall organisational success. So we do want to get somewhere, somewhere in the middle. And this is the thing that we're talking to managers and HR professionals about all the time. Sometimes there's that fear if someone says I have anxiety or I have a diagnosed condition that we can't manage performance. But nobody likes to not be performing. That's not good for our mental health and well-being. If we are sort of clear, direct, but do it in a sensitive, empathic way, and there's no surprises, then we are supporting a person to perform at their best. It's just having those early conversations, making sure there's no surprises, people understand what's happening, and that it's fair that they're involved in that. So yeah, any extreme end is not going to be helpful for the business. You may well have to say we will temporarily park that performance plan because you've got a lot going on, and that's fine, but we are going to pick it up again. But we're just making sure that while someone gets the support they need, or we wait for adjustments to take effect, that we don't go fully into a performance plan. But it can be a tricky balance. So remember, if performance has dipped, there is a reason for it. So someone who is capable of fulfilling that role but suddenly isn't usually means there's some sort of pressure that's got to a point where it's not manageable. I think also worth saying here, think about how your organisation words performance management processes. So it happens less now, but I definitely hear people saying, oh, I will always reassure my team they won't be going on any formal, PDPs at this point, and we haven't got to that stage. I think that language in itself makes people very fearful of that and makes people think, actually, if I go on a performance plan, that's the end for me. They want me out. Whereas actually, if performance is mentioned little and often and regularly, and they're seen as an aid to get better and improve, then people will definitely engage in them more positively. The role of pressure in performance. You may have seen the pressure performance curve before. This is the idea that we need an amount of pressure to perform. If it's not enough on the left of this graph, then our performance will dip because we're switched off. So we're bored, we're not stimulated by what we're doing. We might be busy, but it's just not stimulating us. We've got the comfort zone in the middle where we're getting the right amount of pressure to perform at our best. And then it goes, as the pressure ramps up, we're kind of in stretch where we're achieving our best work, putting our all into it. But then there's a sort of fine line between stretch and strain. So in strain, you can see performance is high. It's our highest, but we're starting to see things like poor judgment, tiredness, emotional impact. And over time, if we don't get time to recharge the batteries, that might slip into crisis or burnout. So we need to be mindful of where we sit on this curve ourselves here, because I think, got to look after our own well-being first, but also within our teams. Where are people sitting? How long have they been there? What's causing that? So what pressures are tipping them into strain if they are tipping? Because everyone has very different tolerance levels to pressure. So important not to compare your team members, and also to be mindful that there could be factors going on influencing that aren't work related as well. So I guess just because somebody's coped before, or you deem a workload to be manageable, it doesn't mean other people are perceiving it that way at that time. We also might be putting internal pressures on ourselves. So, thinking that we're expected to achieve something that is unrealistic because we haven't had that role clarity, or we're a perfectionist. So some of this is internal as well as external as well. So a conversation is always needed to determine, what is causing that pressure, so that we can help someone to, I guess, manage that and find where their comfort is, if you like. So I wanted to include this, and it's in the slides, as a bit of a tool that you might be able to use with your teams to open a conversation if someone's struggling or does report stress, or if performance is dipping and you want to kind of look at whether the pressure has ramped up. To help someone talk about how they're feeling, if language is tricky, sometimes it's hard to say how you are, but actually looking at the chart and saying, oh, I'm kind of in stretch most of the time, but I have been in strain, or even, do you know what, I am a bit bored. That's okay to say it. The work's changed. So help someone to explore that, to raise awareness of each other's warning signs so that we can kind of help support each other and spot signs early, to lead by example, to share where you sit, and as maybe a reflective tool to ask people to think about and then come back in a one-to-one. And this helps to guide a performance conversation, because if you're doing this regularly and this is normal, kind of normalized, then it means if there is a dip in performance or a big change within work, you can tackle that more easily, and people are probably going to be more receptive to you talking about that performance and, oh, things haven't been quite as they normally are last week. What's going on? And it just helps to normalize those conversations. And also to help determine what a manageable workload might look like across the team. It may well actually be that you need to escalate things higher because everybody's workload is unrealistic at that time. So we've talked a bit there around wellbeing very quickly, and we're going to move into the second main factor that was around manager behaviour or effective people management. But first of all, I'm going to go back to the Menti poll, and I'd like you to, there's a multiple choice poll there at work. How do you feel if given negative feedback? So what is your immediate response or feeling when you're given negative feedback? So I didn't put none of the above, but you can just leave it blank if none of these apply. Happy for you to pop into the chat if there's anything else that you also think reflects how you respond. So positive, you take feedback constructively, brilliant, because that is what it is. It is about learning. Are you defensive? So yeah, one person said defensive. So instinctively you feel you have to kind of explain yourself or justify your actions a bit. Apologetic is the most common at the moment. So sorry for doing that. You kind of take responsibility, and it may well be you that is accountable, but it might not be solely you. And sometimes there is that kind of feeling of, oh, I've got to say sorry, because you don't want to let other people down. Embarrassed, you worry about how other people see you if you haven't done something right, especially if you do have quite perfectionistic tendencies. That can be really tricky to take. And some of us get angry, get frustrated with yourself for making the error in the first place. I can relate to quite a few of those actually. And that's totally normal. It's totally normal. And I wanted to do this because I think it's important to put yourself into the position of someone receiving feedback, because it helps us think, actually, yeah, even if we are positive and we take it constructively, after a few minutes, that initial feeling isn't nice. Even if we hide it, there's something in us that just, we just don't like that, because we want to do well, we want to support our teams, we want to do the best we can. So it's totally normal. And we feel this way because of our life experiences, just our personality type, but also the way someone delivered that feedback. If we do trust that manager and they've gone about it in quite a supportive way, we've explored what's happened, then we're going to feel better about it. If we're criticised about something, we're more likely to respond defensively. So it also just reminds us to think about our delivery. And actually, if we're not in the right headspace, not to deliver it then. And to think, actually, let's wait, let's pause, or let's see if someone else is in a better position to deliver this. But imposter thinking and perfectionism definitely kind of feeds into this. So knowing your people, knowing your team, knowing what triggers they have and what's going on for them at that time is definitely important for having those performance conversations. So often, I think if you do, the question there is, how do I feel if given negative feedback? Negative is a key word in that, actually. Is it that we are taking that to be negative because we're being overly self-critical and we're taking it personally, or is it that it is delivered in that way? So I think it's important to always reflect after a performance conversation as to how the person responded and why that might have been, and to ask them for a bit of feedback, actually, how was that delivered for you? Is there anything that we could do differently next time? But remember not to take someone's response personally, because it's usually about them and how they're feeling around that situation. So there's been quite a lot of research into effective people management. So just wanting to touch on a few of the key points here. So effective managers create balance through 3 core behaviours. So giving clear expectations, so people know what good looks like. It reduces that stress. Autonomy and trust, so people having control over how they deliver their work, that boosts that intrinsic motivation. So they're motivated because they want to achieve it, not just because someone else has told them what the result needs to be. And having a supportive coaching style leadership. So the manager recognises what barriers a person might have and helps them move through those, helps them develop a bit of a development path. There's quite a lot of information on this slide, but evidence-based performance drivers, kind of linking in a little bit to the health and safety exec management standards, but a few pointers there on, I suppose you could use it as a bit of a tool to delve deeper into areas where management might need a bit of training or development, asking them to maybe rate how they feel and how confident they are on some of these areas. It might be that they've never been told about what psychological safety is, and so actually, do people in my team feel safe to speak up? I think they do, but how do I know? Things about strength-based development. So, do we look at that? Is feedback normally given when something has gone wrong? So these are just some areas that managers could reflect on, just to ensure that you're putting them in the best position to be able to deliver on performance and to have those helpful conversations, really. And they're not soft practices, they're definitely evidence-based performance drivers. So having that conversation, there are lots of frameworks out there, but what I wanted to focus on here really is creating that safe space first. So this is sort of broader around how we ensure someone's kind of set up to have a positive conversation about performance. So creating a safe space is about initially focusing on well-being. So if you've noticed that performance dip, remember there's a reason for this. So let's ensure someone feels safe, that we know what's going on, and then we can hopefully look at kind of some actions to address them. Identify what's changed in that person's world, encourage an open conversation about how they're finding the work, and kind of encourage them to, or invite them to actually feedback on it if possible. Thank them for trusting you and listen. Often we want to jump in to fix, we can do it this way, or this will help. But at this point, it's about the listening and ensuring someone feels heard. Remind them they're a priority. So yes, the performance might have alerted you to something being wrong, but right now you care about them and you want to know what's going on for them. If you start conversations in this way, people are going to be more receptive to performance. If you're in quite a target-driven environment and world, this is even more important because people are constantly aware of whether they're performing or not and meeting targets. So it's about having those regular, safe conversations. Next part's discussing the performance. So I'm not going to run through everything on there, but again, sort of doing things sensitively, recognizing the impact that their health might be having on work, because they might feel quite relieved by that. Make it about performance, not their personality, and be really specific with examples of where they're not meeting expectations. If possible, it could help that if there is something going on for them, they share that with their team so that there's that team support and understanding as well, because sometimes we get resentment if someone isn't performing or has adjustments and other people don't think it's being managed. Agreeing next steps collaboratively, and this is just ensuring that you work together with that individual, that you are clear. If you know, for example, that as part of your process, after a certain point, they're going to receive a letter that says something that seems quite scary, preempt that, let them know what that means and that you'll talk to them about it when it happens, and just let them know when you're going to next review, and make sure that it's achievable for somebody, really. And I don't know who I'm talking to here, whether you're HR, management, but you've always got support from Thrive at Work, from colleagues, from HR, to help you with these processes. So I wanted to talk just a very brief case study, because I've been doing a bit of work with Octopus Energy and chatting to them about the way they manage things. And they're a company, they've been going quite a while now, but they repeatedly, and you've probably heard if you listen to the radio, received awards for customer service. And so how they work is slightly different to other organisations within that industry, but it's a good example of balancing people and performance. So they don't use rigid targets. Their whole culture is based around freedom and responsibility. And that's something that is, shared right from the interview point. So if someone's not going to meet that fit or fit that role, then that would be, that individual would probably say, I don't know if I like that. I do want more kind of control over how I do things. Control from management. So they have this freedom and responsibility to make decisions, but then they are accountable for them. So they have ownership over how they deliver great service. And, if they have a conversation with someone who's had a bereavement, they can choose to send some flowers to that customer, or they can choose to have a 3-hour conversation to calm someone down. They're not going to be penalised for their call targets. Managers are trained in motivation, coaching and empowerment, and teams are trusted to make decisions without having to kind of go through lots of layers of approval. Performance is guided by purpose, not sanctions. And the outcome is positive. So there is a lot of higher customer satisfaction, a lot stronger engagement from team members, and people are more creative. So they feel, it comes into that psychological safety, but they feel they can share ideas and say, this would work better if we did it in this way. So autonomy plus great management, and that's through training and people kind of investing in the managers, can outperform traditional target-driven systems. So just one example, something to maybe delve into if you're looking at kind of changing how you do things. But I suppose important to say they kind of have this culture from the start. It's very easy to say, if you've built something in this way, it's quite difficult to suddenly change. But there's probably lessons we can learn from it. So final question on the Menti poll. I just wondered which of the following support you've accessed, not for yourself, but to support a team member, so specialist support that you've accessed to help them at work. So we've got a few options there: private work, EAPs, occupational health, like rehab, mental health first aiders, or coaching mentors. Given that I have a voc rehab team who also delivers occupational health, I'm specifically interested in how they're used and whether they're used proactively. So we've got coaching mentors, brilliant. I'm seeing a rise in coaching, and I think it's just fantastic. We work with some workplace strategy coaches who help people who are neurodivergent, and it's just been fantastic getting there early and helping people navigate things like their own confidence, how they communicate, how they receive feedback, and it's all, really helps. So Oc Health, definitely used. It's underused. The research definitely suggests that sadly people often wait until it's got to a point of really long-term absence. I think the stats around that are, if someone returns to work after 4 weeks, 96% of people will return to work under 4 weeks, but once it gets to a year, it's about 50% will return because all the barriers increase. So it was meant to be multiple choice. Could you only answer one each? Apologies. I knew something would go wrong with it. Happy for you to pop in the chat if you use multiple of those. But yes, Oc Health is often used as a last resort. And again, the language around it isn't helpful. People thinking, oh, I've got to go to Oc Health. That means they want to manage me out of the business. Whereas actually, no, we need some specialist guidance on adjustments, on supporting you, and companies wanting to make sure that they are doing things right. And also that they are able to manage that performance. It can help to have that third party come in and give some fresh eyes to a situation. So there is a wealth of support out there. You're not on your own. Access to work does still exist. There are very long waiting times, sadly. But if you don't have the funding, it's worth making applications for people around workstation assessments, travel to work support, coaching, that sort of thing. But the earlier the better. Hub of Hope allows you to research what supports in your local area through postcode, and that can be quite useful for filtering out helping you on your searches online. So there is lots of support out there. I've put templates at the bottom. I'm not sure whether through Thrive at Work you get things like wellness action plan templates, stress risk assessments, but if not, and you're interested, do just get in touch, and I'm happy to provide some, and we'll talk to you a bit more about it. But we've got time for some questions, so I will stop talking now. There's my details if anyone wants to connect, and thank you very much.